Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series on Dynamics CRM in the public sector. Our focus today is on client stakeholder management, and we're going to show you a demonstration of an implementation of CRM that's being used for stakeholder management in federal government. Just a quick commercial on ePerformance. We have a training academy that's dedicated to Dynamics CRM. We're focused on the public sector, so our courses and training are all designed around using Dynamics CRM in the public sector. We provide these information webinars based on our experiences working with people in the public sector using Dynamics CRM for various business purposes. So your presenter today, myself, is Eric Allain. I'm a CRM Enterprise Architect, and I will be delivering the session today. So our content for today is we're going to talk a little bit about Dynamics CRM in the public sector. Then we're going to have a few slides on defining stakeholder management, and then we'll get into a case study, an actual demonstration of a CRM system for Canadian Forces, in particular the Canadian Forces Public Affairs Agency, and then we'll wrap up and take some questions if there are any. So many of you are aware that Dynamics CRM has been emerging rapidly in government. The federal government has standardized on Dynamics CRM as a CRM tool of choice for their departments, and we see it in provincial government agencies as well. But for example, Ontario government is using CRM extensively. So CRM goes back a number of years. Like when we first got involved with it in 2004, 2005, it was primarily a Salesforce automation tool. We're very good at doing things like sales, service requests, marketing, that type of thing. But CRM, in particular, Dynamics CRM, has evolved to be configurable to support many different types of business processes. On the wagon wheel here, you see case and incident management, field inspections, license and permits. Very big in grants and contributions, request and task management, outreach, marketing, economic development. So a wide variety of business purposes. So Dynamics CRM can be configured and to do these different types of lines of business. So what we're showing you today is more of an out-of-the-box version of CRM. It's been extended slightly to support stakeholder management. So it's using a lot of basically the standard capabilities of Dynamics CRM. So stakeholder management, what is it? So there's a few different sort of definitions of stakeholder management. If you happen to be a project manager and a PMP member, they talk a lot about stakeholder management and a lot about the internal stakeholders that are involved in projects and activity within an organization. So stakeholder management it's a critical component of the successful delivery of any project, program, or activity. A stakeholder is any individual, group, or organization that can affect or be affected by or perceive itself to be affected by a program or activity. Effective stakeholder management creates positive relationships with stakeholders through the appropriate management of their expectations and agreed objectives. So that's according to Wikipedia. So stakeholder management, as I mentioned, can apply to your internal stakeholders and your external stakeholders. Today, we're going to focus more on the external stakeholders or the client stakeholders. For many government organizations, clients are one of the most important stakeholders for managing its long-term value, with a major objective being the management of client service and satisfaction. And I also want to mention that there are different types, stakeholder types, and we'll get into this more as we go through the presentation. But often, like from a Dynamics CRM point of view, it's good to differentiate between individual and organizational stakeholders. So individuals are people, sometimes called contacts, and organizations are companies. So with that, so why client stakeholder management? So if we look at government today, there's a lot of initiatives to improve service to citizens, and this creates a need for client profiling, client engagement and outreach, and client feedback. Government agencies are implementing CRM technology on an enterprise scale now, and this presents an opportunity to consolidate multiple disparate client databases. We'll talk more about how many government agencies have evolved to have a lot of different client databases for different purposes within their organizations. And the rapid emergence of self-service client access to government services electronically really creates a need for a central view of the client, and for reasons we'll explain to you, creates a need for stakeholder management to support that central view of the client. So here's an overview of a typical scenario in a government agency. So, and this is where a government agency is providing a number of different types of services to the citizen. So on the left there, we see two types of stakeholders that may be accessing services from a government agency. So we have organizations or individual clients and citizens. So they may be requesting a service, registering a complaint, requesting funding from a grant program, or selling products and services to the government agency. So the government agency has a number of different business units that would support these services. So they may have a service area that's taking requests for a type of service and building a database of information and contacts around that service. They may have an area for complaints where they're building a contact database and case information around those complaints. Or there may be a section dealing with grants and contributions, or typically an area for purchasing where vendors will interact with the government agency. So this creates a lot of different business units dealing with different organizations and clients. So if we look at how this information gets duplicated across stakeholders, so the same individual may be coming to a government agency for different reasons. So here we see on the left, we'll see the same individual who could be a grant recipient in one instance, a complainant in another, and a vendor in another. And in each case, they're accessing a different part of the government organization, who is often typically collecting information in separate databases. So for a grant, they may be collecting organization information on the applicant. They may be building a project profile. They may be generating an agreement. Or for complaint, they may be opening a case file and gathering information on that complaint and assessing it and so forth. Or in the case of a vendor, they may be building a purchasing record or a contract file or something along those lines. So what you end up with is a duplication of organization and contact information across these different business areas. So what stakeholder management is all about is to consolidate a view where you've got that one contact and the information about the different types of activities they have with the government agency are maintained as separate stakeholder profiles. So that way you can maintain one version of an individual organization stakeholder, one contact database, and multiple different profiles for the different types of services they access within an agency. That gives you a sense for why stakeholder management, why you need stakeholder management, and as tools like CRM Dynamics are used more and more in departments on an enterprise scale, stakeholders or clients will be coming to government agencies, and often electronically, and they'll be expecting, if they've already been there before and provided their contact information, that agency will have its contact information. It won't have to enter it again. Or if a contact is changing an address or something along those lines, they won't have to find a number of different business units within an agency and to go and change their address in all those different places. One example of how a consolidated view of contact and organizations can really help. So now let's talk about Dynamics CRM. So Dynamics CRM organizes information into logical entities. These entities are typically things like accounts, all the information associated with a business account, contacts, all the information associated with a contact, and cases, etc. So stakeholder management tends to be focused around the account and contact entity. So let's talk about the CRM account. The CRM account, and we'll get into a demonstration later that shows the account in more detail, but the account defines a business account for an organization or individual that's doing business with or accessing government services. An account may be reused for multiple services, as we showed in those previous examples that are provided to a business entity. It contains information on profiles of the client or stakeholder. It may have tombstone data. The account is often used to define organizations. It's a great way to track organizations within CRM because it has the company name, it has the company address, that type of thing. So a lot of people sort of associate the CRM account with companies and organizations. The account also links to contacts associated with that organization, activities like email, meetings, telephone calls, etc. Business contracts or other types of business activity associated with that account, and stakeholder type. So let's take a look at a screenshot. This is a typical CRM system that's showing the account area, or the account entity. So here we see an account view for 3M. And by the way, that logo is coming from a social media account. CRM has the ability to connect in with social media, and we'll talk more about that throughout the presentation. So on the top left there, we see summary account information. So there's the name of the account or company. There's telephone information. As we scroll down, we see address information. In this case, there's a link to a map to show where that company resides. And then we have, over to the right, we have a list of activities associated with that company or account. And these activities could be notes, could be meetings, could be telephone calls, a variety of things. And this client engagement activity capability is an out-of-the-box feature of Dynamics CRM that associates all the client engagement activity with an account. And down on the right, we see contact information. So there's a list of all of the people associated with this company. So that's a quick view of the CRM account. Now let's talk about contacts. So CRM contacts define people in CRM. So they contain information, again, on tombstone data, so contact info, address, that type of thing. They may have profile information, demographics, basically stakeholder information on the individual. And they of course link back to the account, as we saw in the previous slide. They track activities. They link to business contracts that they're involved with, either as an individual or a company. They may be associated with marketing lists and campaigns, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the demonstration. And they would typically have a stakeholder type, and we'll talk more about that. So that's the CRM contact, and here's a screenshot view of a typical CRM contact. So here again on the left, we have the tombstone data, contact information on the contact, their names, their address, and so forth. And then we have the activity area in the center, tracking any kind of client engagement activity with that contact. Over on the right at the top, we have a link to the organization. In this case, it's the fence connection. And then we have some information below that on social media links. So if in the example that we're going to show you, the CFPA, or the Canadian Forces Public Affairs Organization, links their contact information to social media sites, and so they can track topics and things that are going on around the world associated with that contact and with key areas that they're tracking. So we'll show you examples of that as we go through the presentation. So there may be a number of other things that you would track on the contact record, and we'll show you some more examples of that as we go through the presentation. So that's the CRM contact entity. So now we're going to talk about the Canadian Forces Public Affairs system. So this is a small case study where they're using Dynamics CRM to build a stakeholder management solution. And the reason for building this solution, we see here the list of their original sort of business problem needs. They needed a record on individual or organization stakeholders to easily inform other areas within the department on engagement with external stakeholders. They wanted the capacity to tag stakeholders according to areas of interest. That relates to the social media tracking they want to do. they wanted the capacity to create lists rapidly on specific topics. So if they wanted to send out a newsletter or something along those lines. A capacity for social listening and the generation of multiple styles of reports. The ability to measure the performance of stakeholder engagement. That's kind of an interesting area. And to track email communications between stakeholders and the Canadian forces. So that's what they wanted to be able to, these are the problems they wanted to be able to address with this solution. So now we're going to go into their actual CRM solution and have just navigate around and take a look at the types of things that they can do. Okay, so here we are what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the home button, and this will reorient the software to the landing page. So when somebody goes into the CFPA system, they would land on the active contact screen, which would show basically their view of all the contacts in the system. So if you're not familiar with Dynamics CRM 2015, I'll maybe just show you a few areas like the menuing system, for example. So if I click on the top menu here, I'll see a drop down of the various work areas that I could go into. So it's fairly straightforward in this system. There's help and there's settings, of course, and then there's what they call stakeholder management. So if I select a stakeholder management work area, then that will provide me with a submenu of other work areas. We see here we have contacts, which is where we're currently in at the moment. We see accounts, which is another work area that I could go to. We see distribution lists, which are marketing lists of contacts and so forth. So there's an area where you can go and build these lists and manage them. Or outreach campaigns, another example of a work area where I could create a campaign like, say, an annual newsletter where I would use distribution lists and create steps that I would go through to make sure that newsletter gets created and put out. So those are examples of work areas within CRM and the menuing system to get around to these different work areas. So let's go back to active contacts. That CRM has a nice feature where you can, on the right here, I'm going to select charts. And I'll see that these are fairly easy to create. So these charts can be used for navigation. So I see I'm looking at all the contacts in the system. So maybe I want to make that list a little bit smaller. Maybe I want to drill down on, say, the contacts in Alberta. So I click on the Alberta histogram on the chart here for on the bar for Alberta, and it will drill down to a list of contacts within Alberta. So this is just a nice way to be able to navigate around the system. So if I know specifically what I'm looking for example, I'm looking for a contact called John Doe, I can put it into the search area, and that will allow me to search for John Doe specifically. So now I see a search results list. If there were multiple John Does, I would see them here. Fortunately, there's only one. So I'm going to click on John Doe and drill down to the contact information associated with John Doe. Okay, so this here we see something similar to what I showed you in the PowerPoint slide. So this is an active contact area within CRM. So we're in the summary section here. So on the left, we see some contact information, and I could go through some of these fields. I see there's a salutation, there's the name of the contact. Maybe we'll just add a job title here for John Doe. So I'll save that. And as I move down, I see that John belongs to the International Newswire organization. If I wanted to, I could click on that link, and it would go to that particular account. And I could go further. I could click and go right to their particular site. But I'll get back to the contact information and continue to look at some of the areas that are in here. So I see that there's phone number places to capture phone numbers, one or many email addresses. We see an address area down here where I could, update information on the address for this for John Doe. I see a map of where John Doe resides based on his address. In the center, I see that activity area that we saw on the screen. So I'm seeing here that there's an activity to track John's future articles in social media. And as I move to the right, I see information on his social profile, basically. So social media addresses like LinkedIn and Facebook and so forth. So the CFPA is trying to connect, they're trying to get a sense for what is going on out there in social media associated with the contacts that they're tracking. So by putting John Doe's media links in here, they'll be able to link out to these social media sites using a social media intelligence tool that I'll show you a little bit later. So as we scan down a bit here on the right, we see something called quotes. So if John has produced, has made a public quote or produced an article or something of interest to an area within Canadian Forces, then they'll track that information here. And below that, we see tags. Now, these are very important. I'll refer back to them later. So these tags are topics or areas of interest that Canadian Forces wants to be able to track their stakeholders on. So here's some examples: Parliament, Afghanistan, that type of thing. So we'll see later in the social media part of the system that these come in handy in terms of looking worldwide at what's going on associated with Canadian Forces. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the summary information associated with the contact. I'm gonna close the summary area and have a look at the stakeholder information that CFPA is collecting on each contact. So they could have track many different stakeholder types, but they decided that if they have 3, then that will pretty much help them understand who this particular contact is and what type of stakeholder they are in the context of Canadian Forces. So their primary stakeholder type, they provide a drop down here. So they categorize all of their contacts by one of these stakeholder types. So I've selected media here as John is a journalist. So maybe there's a secondary stakeholder type, so I can track it here, or a third stakeholder type, which I could track here as well. In addition to that type of stakeholder information, CF is also tracking whether they're maybe retired members of Canadian Forces or other important information that they may be interested, or if there's an area of interest that this particular stakeholder has that would also be of interest to Canadian Forces. So what we see here is a contact record that's collecting information on the stakeholder as well. So if we go back to the summary record, I can also click on the account that John belongs to. So that will take me to the account entity or the account area, where I now can enter information or manage information associated with the organization that John works for. So again, I see the tombstone information on the left and the address information. I see the client engagement activity that's going on with that particular organization. And over to the right, I see more information, how big the organization is, 550 employees. And below that, I see the contacts of that organization. I see that there's also a Jane Doe, and perhaps I want to drill down on Jane Doe and see how she might be associated with John or other types of articles that are being produced. So that gives you an idea of what goes on between, or how you can build a stakeholder information around the account and contact information within CRM. So now what we'd like to do is show you what they do with this contact information. So I'll go back to that stakeholder menu that I was talking about, and I'll drill down on the outreach campaign. So the outreach campaign are marketing campaigns that CFPA can set up using all the contact information that they built in their database. So I see there's one called the Fall Newsletter. So I'll drill down on that campaign, and I'll see that it has activities, that are associated with this campaign. It has a schedule of when the campaign is supposed to happen on the left. It has distribution lists or marketing lists, as CRM calls them, which are lists of people or members that they want to contact for this particular newsletter. So if I click on the distribution list, this will bring up all the members that are associated with this particular list that's associated with that particular campaign. And you may have multiple member lists. So typically they would be organized according to stakeholder, like you may have all your media in one list, for example, and then you could put a bunch of these lists together for a newsletter or some other type of event that you're managing with these outreach campaigns. So if I were to go further, I won't do that now. I could click into this member database. I could add more members. I could update them, that type of thing. All right, so that gives you one idea. Now, the other thing I want to show you is the social media and stakeholder management capability of Microsoft. So Microsoft has a subscription-based service called Microsoft Social Listening. So, and this is something that, this is one of the reasons that CFPA built this CRM system the way that they've done, was to be able to tap into this social media intelligence engine that, as Microsoft calls it. So this engine is constantly monitoring all the different social media sites out, collecting information from around the world. And based on the dashboards that you create, and this is one example here, this is just an example, it's not an actual CFPA dashboard, but I could track what's going on in the context of my organization, so what some people call voice of the customer. So on the top left, we see a score. We see the sentiment score. So, you know, basically, depending on the topics that are being filtered into this dashboard, I could see whether there's a negative or positive sentiment associated with the Canadian Forces on all topics, or a segment of topics that would be important to Canadian Forces. Moving down from that score, on the top left, I see a location map. So I could drill down into any region and filter the information by that region. So perhaps there might be an area in the Middle East that is a little more negative than an area in North America. So I could start to break down, you know, where the negative or positive sentiment may be coming from. And then below that, you know, associated with all those information that we put into contacts and accounts previously, I've identified authors, and I've identified social media sources, and I've identified topics. So the dashboard breaks down all that information, allows you to drill down into these different areas. So basically, you can find out where the sentiment is coming right down to the individual person who may be writing an article or you know, or updating some social media site somewhere associated with a topic that Canadian Forces is tracking. So that's essentially, so this is the primary sort of purpose for CFPA's stakeholder management system. I mean, there's the administrative benefits of being able to manage contacts and administer, but you know what they're really after is to be able to track the performance of Canadian Forces using these social sentiment tracking types of systems. So that's our session for today. I want to thank you again for joining us today, and look forward to talking to you again in a future webinar session that we may provide.